The stale, recycled air of the airplane cabin was a familiar perfume of exhaustion. For 3 days, I'd been living out of a suitcase in a sterile hotel room in Chicago, shaking hands, forcing smiles, and closing a deal that my company had been chasing for months. I was successful, but drained. All I wanted was the comforting chaos of home, the smell of my wife Sarah's cooking, and the bone-crushing hug of my 7-year-old son Leo. As the taxi pulled up to our quiet suburban street, a sense of profound relief washed over me. The porch light was on, a golden beacon calling me home. I paid the driver, grabbed my roller bag, and walked up the familiar stone path. The weight of the trip seemed to lift with each step. I pictured Leo, probably already in his pajamas, launching himself at me the second the door opened. I smiled, fumbling for my keys. But as I inserted the key into the lock, I noticed something odd. The door was already slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness against the warm interior light. My heart gave a little flutter of unease. Sarah was usually so meticulous about security. Pushing the door open, I called out, "Honey, I'm home." The silence that answered was heavy, unnatural. The house was usually buzzing with the sound of the TV or Leo's energetic chatter. Tonight, it was dead quiet. And then I saw him. Lying on the welcome mat, just inside the door, was Leo. He was curled on his side, his face pale and waxy in the dim light. His favorite stuffed dinosaur, Rex, clutched loosely in his hand. He was terrifyingly still. For a moment, my brain refused to process the image. It was a scene of such profound wrongness that my mind simply short-circuited. Then, a tidal wave of pure, unadulterated panic crashed over me. I dropped my bag, the sound echoing in the silent house. "Leo!" I screamed, stumbling forward and falling to my knees beside him. I touched his cheek. It was cool and clammy. His chest wasn't moving. "No, no." The words were a choked whisper. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers thick and useless, and dialed 911. The operator's calm voice was a bizarre counterpoint to the frantic symphony of my own terrified heartbeat. The next hour was a blur of flashing lights, frantic paramedics, and the wail of a siren that seemed to be screaming my own internal agony out into the night. I found Sarah in the living room, staring blankly at the wall, her phone in her hand. She looked shocked, distant. When she saw me, she rushed over, but her embrace felt hollow. Her words, "I just found him, Mark. I was upstairs. I just came down and found him," felt rehearsed and thin. At the time, I chalked it up to shock. My own was so profound I could barely think straight. At the hospital, we were relegated to a sterile, beige waiting room while a team of doctors worked on our son. The minutes stretched into agonizing eternities. Sarah paced, wringing her hands, constantly checking her phone. "Who are you texting?" I asked, my voice raspy. "My sister," she mumbled, not looking at me. "I need support." It felt off. Why not lean on me? We were in this together. But a strange chasm had opened between us in that waiting room. Every time a doctor came out to give us a non-update, "He's stable, but we're still running tests," the chasm widened. Finally, a stern-faced doctor named Eris Thorne sat us down. "Leo suffered a severe anaphylactic reaction," she said, her words precise and heavy. "We managed to stabilize him, but it was close. Do you know if he has any severe allergies?" I nodded immediately. "Yes, nuts. All nuts, but especially peanuts and pistachios. We're incredibly careful. There's nothing like that in our house. We read every label. His school is a nut-free zone. It's impossible." I looked at Sarah for confirmation, but she was staring at the floor, her face ashen. "Sarah?" I prompted. She looked up, her eyes wide with something that looked like fear. "No," she whispered. "Nothing. I don't know how this could have happened. He was fine when I put him to bed." Dr. Thorne's gaze lingered on Sarah for a moment too long. His tests came back positive for a massive pistachio exposure. We need to understand how this happened to prevent it in the future. I spent the night by Leo's bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, a rhythm that was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. Sarah said she needed to go home to get some things for Leo, that she couldn't bear the hospital smell. I let her go. I needed to be alone with my son. As I sat there, holding his small, limp hand, the doctor's words echoed in my mind. Massive pistachio exposure. It was impossible. Unless someone had brought them into our home. A seed of suspicion, dark and ugly, began to germinate in the fertile ground of my fear and exhaustion. Sarah's behavior replayed in my head. Her distance, her constant focus on her phone, her strange, fearful reaction to the doctor's questions. It didn't feel like the grief of a mother who's in the hospital. It felt like the panic of someone who was hiding something. The next morning, Leo was awake but groggy. Seeing his eyes flutter open was like watching the sun rise after a long, dark night. I told him I needed to pop home to get his favorite blanket and some fresh clothes. It was a lie. I was going home to find an answer. The house felt different when I walked in. It felt violated. The air was thick with secrets. I started in the kitchen, methodically going through the trash. Under a pizza box, I found it. A small, crumpled receipt from a gourmet market downtown, a place we never shopped. The date was from 2 nights ago, while I was in Chicago. The items listed were a bottle of expensive wine, some fancy cheese, and a 1-pound bag of roasted pistachios. My blood ran cold. I tore through the pantry, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tucked behind a row of canned beans, I found the bag. It was open, and about a quarter of the pistachios were gone. They were in my house, my safe house. I felt a surge of white-hot rage, followed by a wave of nausea. Who brought them here? Sarah had lied. She had lied to me, and she had lied to the doctors. Then I remembered the nanny cam. We'd bought it when Leo was a baby, and now just used it as a general security camera for the living room when we were away. I had checked it a few times from my hotel in Chicago, just to feel connected. I remembered the feed being off the last time I checked. Sarah must have turned it off, but the system automatically backed up all footage to a cloud server. She wouldn't have known that. With trembling hands, I opened my laptop and logged into the account. I navigated to the date on the receipt. The video loaded. There was Sarah, laughing. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before was with her, standing in my living room. He was tall, handsome in a generic way, and he was pouring 2 glasses of the wine from the receipt. He handed one to Sarah, and they toasted. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was a deep, passionate kiss that spoke of familiarity and intimacy. I felt the air leave my lungs as if I'd been punched in the gut. I wanted to stop watching, but I couldn't. I fast-forward. I saw them on the couch, eating the cheese and pistachios. I saw them disappear upstairs. My world, the carefully constructed reality I had built my life upon, was crumbling into dust around me. But the worst was yet to come. I forwarded to later in the evening. The man was gone. Sarah was cleaning up. Then the video showed Leo, in his pajamas, walking into the living room. He must have woken up. He saw the bowl of pistachios on the coffee table. My heart stopped. I saw him, my curious, innocent boy, pick one up. He looked at it, then popped it in his mouth. My scream self wanted to scream, to smash through the digital barrier and stop him. A few minutes later, the video showed him scratching at his throat. He started coughing, a small wheezing sound. He went to Sarah, tugging on her sleeve. She waved him away, irritated, trying to text on her phone. He stumbled, gasping for air, his face starting to swell. It was then she finally looked at him, and her face went from irritation to sheer panic. But she didn't call 911. The camera's timestamp proved it. She ran around, grabbing his EpiPen, but she fumbled with it, her hands shaking. It didn't seem to work properly. Minutes ticked by. Precious, life-saving minutes. I watched in horror as my son's life was draining away because my wife was too afraid of her affair being discovered to make the one call that would save him. She picked up her phone, but she called the man, her lover. He must not have answered. Finally, after nearly 15 minutes of indecision and terror, she dragged Leo's now unconscious body to the front door, laying him on the mat. She left him there like a package and ran upstairs to wait, to create her alibi. She staged the scene for me to find. The betrayal was so profound, so monstrous, it was beyond comprehension. It wasn't just the affair. It was that she had valued her secret more than our son's life. She had watched him suffocate and had chosen to protect herself first. I closed the laptop, a single guttural sob escaping my lips. The man who had left for Chicago 3 days ago was gone. In his place was someone I didn't recognize, someone hollowed out by a truth more poisonous than any allergy. I drove back to the hospital, the evidence saved on my phone. I walked into Leo's room. Sarah was there, stroking his hair, playing the part of the devoted mother. "He's doing so much better," she said, smiling at me. It was the most grotesque performance I had ever witnessed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I simply walked over to the bed, kissed Leo's forehead, and then turned to her. "I know, Sarah," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I know everything." I held up my phone and played the video. I didn't show her the affair part. I started it from the moment Leo walked into the room.